さあさあお待ちだ。お分かりや。雪平流香ばしバターピラフいなり寿司。
Yukihira's Inari Pilaf Sushi for that Saito battle. I don't know where he came up with this, but I mean, I'm down.
Thank you to Ridge.com for sponsoring today's video. Hello again, little brother. Big brother, what are you doing here? I've come to teach you a final lesson. There's nothing more I can learn from you. I have finally surpassed you. Brother, there's no way you could have done this. You can't gain strength without losing speed. But now I can hold 12 cards with cash. Ha! You're pathetic. Take this. That'll teach him. I have surpassed you, brother. That no longer works. Nani? I'm made of titanium with an RFID blocker. Impossible! No! Gain strength, speed, and 10% off with ridge.com/chefpk. Now the first thing we really want to make is the sauce, and for the sauce we're going to need some kiri mochi, and this feels like a brick. So in a sauce pot goes about 1 cup worth of soy milk, unsweetened soy milk, don't use that sweet stuff. Then we're going to dice up this kiri mochi. Now it is very thick and very dense, so just take your time cutting this. You do want to cut this up into smaller pieces, so that way it incorporates itself into the sauce just a little bit better. Once you have your kiri mochi all diced up, we're only using about a half a kiri mochi for this. Go ahead and drop it right into your soy milk and bring this up to a medium heat to bring it up to a simmer. Now make sure you do constantly stir this because that kiri mochi does stick to the bottom, and once it's stuck, it is stuck and it gets burned and it's not fun. Once all of your mochi is dissolved, you shouldn't see any more chunks in this, and that's really what you're looking for so your sauce is nice and creamy. Now the cheeses we're using for this are the same cheeses we used for the doppio pizza. You're gonna need 1 ounce of mozzarella, 1 ounce of parmesan, just go ahead and chop this stuff up, and about 1 teaspoon worth of this gorgonzola. Now gorgonzola can be overwhelmingly strong, so just make sure you don't use too much of it. The last cheese you're going to need is about a tablespoon worth of ricotta. Now we have all of our 4 cheeses, and all of these are going to go straight into our sauce. Bring your sauce back up to that medium heat and just start dumping in your cheeses. There's no rhyme or reason to this. You can put in your cheeses however you feel like putting in your cheese. Now keep in mind with the cheese in there, you do want to constantly stir this because the cheese can burn to the bottom and you don't want that to happen. Now season this with a good helping of black pepper and just a pinch of salt. Get this all stirred up together and just make sure you do give this a taste at some point. But that's pretty much your sauce. We're just going to go ahead and leave this here and work on the rest of it. Now for the apple butter, but it's really an apple beurre monte. We're only using 1 apple for this, and I'm using a Fiji apple, but feel free to use whatever apple you want. You want to grate this directly into the pan that you're using so all of those juices and all of that goodness goes right into it. And to give it some pop and keep it from going brown right away, I am going to add in just about a half a lemon worth of juice. This comes out to just a little over 1 ounce worth of lemon juice. We also need to hit this with a little bit of sugar. I use about a half a tablespoon worth of sugar for this just to sweeten it slightly while it starts to cook. Now we're going to cook this over a nice medium heat just until the apples soften and until a lot of that liquid actually starts evaporating. Now go ahead and give this a taste and make sure it is sweet enough. You don't want it overwhelmingly sweet, but you also don't want it too bland. Once your pan looks like this with just a little bit of that liquid left in it, this is when you turn the heat down. And this is when we start adding in some fresh, cold, whole, unsalted butter. I'm going to be using about 3 tablespoons worth of butter for this, but you only want to add it in 2 parts. Add in about 1.5 tablespoons at first, and then follow it up by adding in the rest later. The reason for this is because you want the butter to fully emulsify before adding in too much, otherwise you may end up with a big runny mess of butter, apple, weird mush. With that last batch of butter that you threw in there, make sure the heat is off and you constantly stir this to get that butter and those apples emulsified. You're stirring this to a point to where all of that butter is completely gone. Give this a taste just to appreciate how delicious it is. Now, these are the only tofu pockets I could find at the store that come with a little seasoning packet that you're not going to really need. These tofu pockets in particular come pre-seasoned, but we are going to re-season them. Feel free to not season them again, and you could just literally use these out of the package and be good. If you do want to rinse them off, you can, and just remove some of that excess liquid that they have because it is overwhelmingly sweet in my opinion. Once you rinse all of it off, take a little bit of dashi that you had from a previous recipe, add in about a cup worth of dashi followed by about 2 tablespoons worth of soy sauce. We're going to hit this with about 1 tablespoon worth of sugar, give it a little bit of a swirl, and we're going to bring this over to the stove. Once your liquid has come to a simmer, go ahead and drop in all of your tofu pockets. These don't need to cook too long because they have been previously cooked. I went ahead and simmered mine for about 4 minutes until they absorbed a decent amount of liquid. Now carefully remove these from the pot, and again, be careful because they can tear and burn your fingers. Once you have removed all of your tofu from your pot, go ahead and try one because, you know, it's delicious. We can finally move on to the pilaf. For the pilaf, I'm using about 6 ounces worth of chicken breast, and for the chicken breast, you do want to dice this into small bite-sized pieces. The reason why you want them as small dice is because you want them to be about the same size as your shrimp. I'm using about 4 ounces worth of shrimp for this, and again, you want these as a small dice, so that way they actually fit in your inari pocket. Yes, there is a rhyme and reason for why we're cutting them this small. Once you have everything diced up, you can place them in the same bowl because we are going to cook these at the same time. Now we're only using about 1/4 of an onion, and this comes out to about 2 ounces worth of diced onion. This is just going to give the rice a little bit of flavor. I'm not sure if Yukihira actually uses this, but you need your onion in your pilaf. So we have 2 cups of rice, our shrimp and chicken, a little bit of onion, a small dab of butter, about 1 tablespoon worth, and 3 cups worth of chicken stock to get this pilaf going. Now in a nice hot pan, add your butter in, and you do want to make sure this butter is totally melted. Then add in your rice first. I know a lot of people would normally add in their onion first just to get the onion cooking, but I actually want the rice to absorb all of that butter flavor because it's a butter battle. I mean, come on. Now we're going to add in our onion, and we're going to cook this until the onion gets nice and translucent. This just means that it kind of turns into almost an opaque color in a way, to where you're not caramelizing it, but it's just getting those onions nice and tender. Once your onions are done, we're going to add in both our chicken and our shrimp at the same time. Hit this with a generous helping of salt and a good amount of black pepper because you want this seasoned really nicely. Start tossing this until you get a little bit of color on that chicken and shrimp. This is actually going to start turning into that nice opaque white color that you're looking for because you're not going to get a lot of actual caramelization on it. Now add in your 3 cups worth of chicken stock directly on top of your rice. This is going to start to deglaze the pan, and alternatively you could deglaze this with sake or wine as well and then add your stock. You want to give this just a little bit of a stir and then go ahead and throw on a lid that still doesn't fit. None of my pans match up with any of my lids. So grab yourself another pan and use that pan as a lid so that way you can actually cook your rice. That's a stupid idea. We're just going to transfer it to the other pan because it's bigger and I actually have a lid for this one. Now with a lid on your rice, you do want to simmer this at a light simmer for about 15 minutes before checking it. Mine went for a solid 15-16 minutes before all of my liquid was gone and my rice was perfectly cooked, so I was super happy with this. At this point, you do want to give it a taste, see if it needs any more salt and pepper. This was really, really nice the way it was, so I just kind of folded the rice over and just let it hang out for a little bit. 10-15 minutes, it'll be good. And you're really going to eat this, aren't you? Aren't you? Now, right before we're ready to stuff our inari pockets, we do want to add in our apple butter towards the end of this process, so that way you don't cook out too much of that apple butter. Give this a taste and see if it has enough sweetness for you. You want just a little bit of sweetness. Mine wasn't sweet enough, so I added in all of the apple butter we made and folded this in gently to not break any of those rice granules because that's the last thing you want to do. Now we finally get to stuff these inari pockets. So grab yourself a tray lined with aluminum foil and then grab your little inari pockets. Now be very gentle with this because they can tear and rip, but you want to fold these over kind of like, I guess like a sock maybe? Do people do that? You want to fold over just a little bit of the top so this way you can add in your rice without really fighting the inari pocket. So grab yourself a spoon and start stuffing your inari pockets. I started with about a tablespoon worth of rice at first just to see how full these would get. They actually can take a significant amount of rice, but you also don't want to overstuff them because then you risk tearing them and it's just not a good time for anybody. Once you have about 2 tablespoons worth of rice in there, go ahead and bring those folded edges back up, bring those together into a little tiny little pocket of joy, and you want to place this seam side down on your foil so they don't open. Repeat the process with all of your inari pockets, and just remember to take your time so that way you're not really fighting it, you're not going to tear anything, and once you're done, you have all these beautiful boys ready to go. Now once they're all lined up, add a little bit of your sauce on top of each one of your inari pockets. You don't want to add too much because it can oversaturate it and become really, really strong. Once you have all of your sauce on your inari pockets, we're going to set this in the broiler in the toaster oven for about 7 minutes until you get some color on them. While those are broilerizing, go ahead and garnish your plate, you know, a little shiso leaf. And these are what they look like out of the oven. Just a little bit of color, nice and toasty boys, and we're going to put on 3 on this plate. You can definitely stack this with all 6 if you're just going to go for it, but 3 looked really nice. You can add more sauce to it at this point, but I felt like they had just enough to give it that beautiful flavor. And there it is, Yukihira's rice pilaf inari sushi.
There it is, guys. Yukihira's pilaf inari sushi. I can safely say I've never actually had anything like this before. I've never seen anything like this before with maybe a pilaf or even hot sushi rice inside of an inari and then baked. So here we go. You know what? It's not bad. It's super buttery. It's really rich, but you get a little bit of the sweetness and the lemon juice in there from adding that apple butter late. Remember, don't cook it with it. It's actually pretty good. Okay, that's pretty delicious. Get off me, Leaf. We don't need any greens. It does come down to balancing all of those different flavors, and I really feel like you got to go off of your own palate, just like I did. Let me know if you've ever had anything like this before. I've definitely had hot sushi before, and it's not my favorite, but this is pretty good. If you want to support the channel directly, check out the links below for Patreon or buy my book. My name is Chef PK. I hope I taught you something today. Get subscribed, and remember, keep playing with your food. Hold on, we're just gonna take another one. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. I don't want to hear it.